I'm Harper Heath, 26 years old, and I stood in my cap and gown scanning the packed auditorium for my parents. Empty seats mocked me where they promised to sit. My phone buzzed with a video of them at our neighbor's Super Bowl party, cheering with beer bottles raised high. 3 days later, a $5,000 catering bill arrived with a sticky note saying, "Your share for the graduation party we threw you." The party I never attended, never knew about, while I sat alone crying in my studio apartment eating leftover Chinese food. Before I dive into this unbelievable story of family betrayal, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I discovered my worth when the people who should have celebrated me tried to destroy me instead. Trust me, this story takes turns you won't see coming. So let's get into what really happened when I finally stood up to the people who gave me life, but never gave me love. Growing up as the middle child in the Heath family meant growing up invisible. My older brother Tyler was 28 and the golden boy who could do no wrong, while my younger sister Megan, at 22, was the princess who got everything she pointed at. I existed somewhere in between, like furniture they occasionally bumped into and apologized to before moving on with their lives. My parents, Dorothy and Frank Heath, had perfected the art of selective attention. They never missed one of Tyler's football games, traveling across state lines if necessary, taking time off work, and organizing elaborate tailgate parties. For Megan's beauty pageants, they spent thousands on dresses, coaches, and entry fees, transforming our living room into a shrine of tiaras and sashes. But when I won the state spelling bee in 8th grade, they forgot to pick me up from school, and I waited 4 hours in the rain before walking the 5 miles home. The pattern started early and never stopped. In elementary school, I learned to forge their signatures on permission slips, because they always forgot to sign them. By middle school, I was making my own parent-teacher conference appointments and attending them alone, telling teachers my parents were working. The teachers would give me pitying looks, but I'd grown used to those. What I couldn't grow used to was the hope that would bloom in my chest every time they promised things would be different. I threw myself into academics because books didn't forget about me and grades didn't play favorites. When I graduated as valedictorian of my high school class, I thought surely this time they'd show up. I saved them front row seats and even ironed Frank's favorite tie the night before. Dorothy promised she'd take pictures, and Tyler said he'd leave work early. The ceremony came and went with 3 empty chairs staring back at me. Later I found out they'd left halfway through because Tyler's girlfriend needed help planning her birthday party. That night, I made a decision that would shape the next 8 years of my life. I would become completely self-sufficient. I would build a life so solid, so independent, that I'd never need to wait for them again. When I got accepted to nursing school with a full academic scholarship, I didn't even tell them for 3 weeks. When I finally mentioned it at dinner, Dorothy asked if nursing school was like a trade school, and Frank wondered aloud if I wouldn't rather do something easier, like retail. While Tyler received a brand new truck for his 21st birthday, and Megan got a shopping spree in New York for hers, I worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks and scrubs. I cleaned offices at night, tutored chemistry students on weekends, and worked at a coffee shop between classes. My classmates thought I was crazy, but they didn't understand that exhaustion was easier to bear than disappointment. Nursing school became my sanctuary. My professors noticed me, my clinical supervisors praised my dedication, and my patients remembered my name. For the first time in my life, I mattered to people. I wasn't just the forgotten middle child anymore. I was Harper Heath, future pediatric nurse, and I was building a life where I would never be invisible again. As graduation approached, something strange happened. My parents started paying attention. Dorothy called to ask about my plans, and Frank even offered to help me move into my new apartment. They seemed genuinely interested in my achievement, asking about my job prospects and talking about how proud they were. Against every instinct I'd developed, against every lesson my childhood had taught me, I let hope creep back in. They promised they'd be at graduation. Not just promised, but swore on everything holy that they wouldn't miss it for the world. Dorothy even asked about the color of my cap and gown, so she could coordinate her outfit. Frank talked about bringing his good camera. For once in my life, it seemed like I was going to have my moment with my family. I should have known better. 26 years of being Harper Heath should have taught me that when it came to my family, promises were just words, and words from them were worth less than nothing. The morning of my graduation dawned bright and clear, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept from excitement, running through the day in my mind like a movie I'd been waiting my whole life to see. I pressed my cap and gown twice, making sure every fold was perfect. My phone had 3 alarms set, though I'd been awake since 4 in the morning. This was it, the day my parents would finally see me graduate, finally witness something I'd accomplished entirely on my own. I'd texted them reminders all week, probably annoying them with my enthusiasm, but I didn't care. Dorothy had responded with heart emojis and "can't wait, sweetie," while Frank sent thumbs up and "proud of you, kiddo." I'd screenshot those messages, silly as it sounds, because they were proof that this time would be different. I'd even saved them special seats in the 3rd row, right on the aisle so Frank could get good pictures. The parking pass I'd bought with my coffee shop tips was tucked into an envelope with their names on it. My best friend from nursing school, Jasmine, offered to pick me up, but I wanted to arrive early to make sure everything was perfect. I placed reserve signs on their seats and texted them photos so they'd know exactly where to sit. The auditorium filled slowly at first, then in a rush as ceremony time approached. I kept turning around from my spot in the graduate section, watching the doors, waiting for their familiar faces. They'll be here, I whispered to myself as the processional music started. They're just running late. Traffic is bad on Saturdays. The dean began his opening remarks, and still those 3 seats remained empty. Other parents were squeezing into standing room areas, but my family's spot sat vacant like missing teeth in a smile. Jasmine caught my eye from 2 rows back and mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded and faced forward, blinking hard against the burning in my eyes. When they called my name, Harper Marie Heath, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, summa cum laude, the applause was thunderous. My classmates cheered, my professors smiled proudly, and strangers clapped for my achievement. But all I could hear was the silence from 3 empty seats. I walked across that stage with my head high and my heart shattered, accepting my diploma with hands that barely shook. After the ceremony, as families clustered for photos and celebrations, Jasmine's mom pulled me into their group. "You're part of our family today, sweetheart," she said, and I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry in private. When everyone headed to restaurants for celebration dinners, Jasmine invited me to join them, but I couldn't. I needed to go home and understand why they'd broken their promise again. My apartment felt smaller than usual as I hung my cap and gown carefully in the closet. I'd bought a small cake from the grocery store bakery, chocolate with vanilla frosting that said "Congratulations, graduate" in blue letters. I sat at my kitchen table, still in my dress, and cut myself a single slice. That's when I saw the package by my door. The thick manila envelope had been shoved under the door while I was gone. No delivery markings, just my name scrawled across the front in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a catering invoice from Antonio's Italian restaurant, dated today, for $5,000. The itemized list included appetizers for 50 people, a full dinner buffet, an open bar, and a specialty cake. At the bottom, a yellow sticky note in Dorothy's writing. "Your share for the graduation party we threw for you. Due by the end of the month. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at that invoice until the numbers blurred. A graduation party? Today? While I was actually graduating. My phone had been on silent during the ceremony, and as I scrolled through my notifications, the truth became horrifyingly clear. My cousin Beth had posted photos on Instagram with the caption, "Great party for Harper's big day. Too bad she couldn't make it." The timestamp showed the party started exactly when my ceremony began. The photos revealed everything. My parents' house decorated in my school colors, tables full of food, and most damning of all, a giant screen TV showing the Super Bowl pregame coverage. This wasn't a graduation party that happened to conflict with the ceremony. This was a Super Bowl party disguised as my celebration. The decorations were minimal, just enough to justify the theme, while everything else screamed football celebration. I called my Aunt Claire, my mother's sister who had always been kind to me. She answered on the second ring, slightly tipsy and confused. "Harper, honey, We missed you at your party. Your mom said you had to work right after graduation and couldn't make it. I left your card with her, $500 for your new apartment. My hands shook as more pieces clicked into place. I opened Facebook and found the event page my mother had created 3 months ago. Harper's graduation celebration, with a date that just happened to be Super Bowl Sunday. The guest list included all our extended family and family friends, people who hadn't seen me in years, but who would feel obligated to contribute money for such a milestone. The comments section made me sick. Uncle Robert. Can't make it but sending a check. Cousin Marie. So proud. Sent money with Tom. Family friend Susan. What an achievement. Card in the mail. Every single one representing someone who thought they were celebrating me while my parents collected their money. I called cousin after cousin, aunt after aunt, and the story was always the same. Dorothy had reached out personally, tears in her eyes, talking about how proud they were, how they wanted to throw me the perfect party. She'd mentioned how expensive everything was these days, how hard it was to give me what I deserved. People opened their wallets out of love for a niece, a cousin, a family friend they thought was finally being celebrated by her parents. The final count was staggering. From what I could piece together, my parents had collected at least $12,000 for my graduation party. The catering bill showed they'd spent $5,000. The math was simple and cruel. They'd used my achievement as a fundraising opportunity, thrown a Super Bowl party with the money, and now expected me to pay for half of it. But the cruelest cut came from a video my teenage cousin posted on TikTok. Timestamped during my ceremony, it showed my parents in their living room, beer bottles raised, screaming at the TV as their team scored. In the background, barely visible, was a small banner that read "Congrats Harper," taped crooked on the wall. My father's voice boomed over the crowd noise. This is what I call a real celebration. Not sitting in some stuffy auditorium for 3 hours. I watched that video 17 times, each replay driving the truth deeper. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't mixed up the times. They had deliberately, methodically planned to skip my graduation for a football party. And they'd funded it by scamming our entire extended family in my name. My hands trembled as I dialed my mother's number, fury and heartbreak warring in my chest. She answered on the third ring, crowd noise and laughter loud in the background. Harper, how was the ceremony? Sorry we couldn't make it, but this party for you is amazing. Everyone's here celebrating. You mean celebrating the Super Bowl? I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I saw the videos, Mom. I know exactly what kind of party you threw. The background noise faded as she moved to another room. Now Harper, don't be dramatic. We threw you a beautiful party. Everyone contributed because they love you. The least you could do is be grateful instead of attacking us for trying to celebrate your achievement. Celebrate? You collected $12,000 from our family for a graduation party, threw a Super Bowl party instead, and sent me a bill for $5,000. How is that celebrating me? Dorothy's voice turned ice cold. You always were an ungrateful child. We raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us? By accusing us of stealing? Your father and I went to a lot of trouble to organize this event. That venue wasn't free, you know. The venue was your living room. I have the photos. Don't raise your voice at me, young lady. You're clearly too emotional to discuss this rationally. The bill is due by the end of the month. Family helps family, Harper. It's time you learned that. She hung up before I could respond. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Tyler's came first. Really? You're going to attack Mom and Dad for throwing you a party? Not everything is about you, Harper. Some of us understand family loyalty. I tried calling him, but he sent me straight to voicemail. His next text was even worse. You've always been jealous that people actually like spending time with me and Megan. Maybe if you weren't such a stuck-up bitch, they would have come to your boring ceremony. Megan's attack came through social media. She posted on Facebook, tagging me and half our extended family. Some people can't just be grateful. My parents threw Harper an amazing party, and all she does is complain that it wasn't good enough. Guess that fancy degree didn't teach her basic manners or gratitude. No wonder she has no friends. and had to graduate alone. The comments started immediately. Family members who had been scammed began taking sides, most believing my parents' version of events. After all, who would use their own child's graduation as a con? It was easier to believe I was an ungrateful daughter than accept that Dorothy and Frank were capable of such deception. My phone rang again. Grandma Ruth, my father's mother, the woman who had babysat me countless times and who I thought understood how my parents treated me. Harper Marie Heath, she began, and I knew I was in trouble. Your mother is in tears. How dare you accuse them of stealing when they went out of their way to celebrate you? They told me how you refused to attend your own party, how you think you're too good for your family now that you have a degree. Grandma, that's not what happened. They never told me about the party. They promised to come to my graduation and then. I don't want to hear excuses. Your parents sacrificed everything for you children, and this is how you repay them? By spreading lies? I'm ashamed of you, Harper. I thought I raised you better than this. She hung up before I could defend myself. More messages flooded in. Aunts calling me selfish. Uncles disappointed in my behavior. Cousins blocking me on social media after reading Megan's posts. Each message felt like another knife in my back, wielded by people I'd grown up with, people I'd trusted. Dorothy escalated her campaign the next day. She called every family member personally, tears in her voice, spinning a tale of an ungrateful daughter who had broken their hearts. She claimed I'd known about the party all along, but refused to attend because I thought I was better than them now. She said I'd demanded they skip the party to attend the ceremony, knowing they'd already paid for catering and disappointed 50 guests. The lies grew with each telling. By the time the story reached my father's cousins in Texas, I had apparently screamed at my parents, called them worthless, and threatened to never speak to them again unless they paid me the money they'd collected. Frank added his own embellishments, telling people I'd been difficult and demanding throughout college, always asking for money while refusing to visit or help with family obligations. My childhood best friend Emma, who had become Dorothy's goddaughter after I left for college, sent me the cruelest message of all. I always wondered why your parents seemed so sad when your name came up. Now I understand. They tried so hard to include you, to celebrate you, and you threw it in their faces. I'm glad they have me to appreciate them since their own daughter can't. I tried to defend myself, sending screenshots of their promises to attend graduation, the photos of the empty seats, the timestamp evidence showing the party was planned for Super Bowl Sunday months in advance. But Dorothy had prepared for this. She claimed I'd doctored the images, that I was trying to ruin their reputation out of spite. For every piece of evidence I presented, she had a counter-narrative that painted me as unstable and vindictive. The attacks intensified. Tyler showed up at my apartment complex, banging on my door at 2 a.m. Open up, Harper. Time to apologize to Mom and Dad. When I didn't answer, he kicked the door hard enough to leave a dent, screaming about family loyalty and ungrateful bitches who needed to be taught respect. Frank left voicemails that grew increasingly aggressive. You have 1 week to apologize publicly and pay your share of the party. 1 week, Harper. Don't test me. You might have a fancy degree, but I'm still your father, and you will show respect. Then came the social media harassment. Megan created a hashtag, ungrateful graduate, posting edited photos and out-of-context screenshots to make me look horrible. She shared private messages from years ago, twisting their meaning. A text where I'd said I was too tired to visit became, Harper admits she hates spending time with family. A message about being broke in college became, Harper only contacts parents for money. My parents took it a step further. They started calling my workplace. Dorothy introduced herself as my concerned mother to the receptionist, claiming I'd been showing signs of mental instability, and she was worried about patient safety. Frank sent an email to the hospital administration, suggesting they might want to reconsider hiring someone who had such obvious problems with honesty and gratitude. I had to sit through a humiliating meeting with HR, explaining the family situation while trying not to cry. Thank God my supervisor Beth had seen similar situations before. She recognized the pattern of family harassment and assured me my job was safe, but warned me to document everything. The extended family attacks continued in waves. Some relatives demanded I return their graduation gifts, claiming they were obtained through false pretenses. Others insisted I owed them apologies for embarrassing the family. A few entrepreneurial cousins suggested I could make things right by paying back everyone who had contributed to the party. My Aunt Claire, who had initially been sympathetic, called me after Dorothy got to her. "Harper, I want to believe you, but your mother showed me the party planning emails. She tried so hard to make it special for you. Maybe you just misunderstood? Maybe you could apologize and move forward?" Family is family after all. Even she had been turned against me. The isolation was complete. In less than a week, I'd gone from graduating with highest honors to being the family pariah, painted as an ungrateful, mentally unstable daughter who had cruelly rejected her loving parents' attempts to celebrate her. But the worst was yet to come. Tyler posted on LinkedIn, where all my professional contacts could see. Sad when family members let success go to their heads. My sister Harper Heath recently graduated nursing school and immediately turned on the family who supported her. Makes you wonder about someone's character when they treat their own parents this way. Just a warning to any potential employers. That's when I realized this wasn't just about family drama anymore. They were trying to destroy not just my relationships, but my future career. The graduation that should have been my proudest moment had become the weapon they were using to destroy everything I'd worked for. Monday morning arrived with the promise of new beginnings. I walked into Riverside Children's Hospital for my first day as a pediatric nurse, determined to push the family drama aside and focus on the career I'd worked so hard to build. The cheerful walls decorated with cartoon characters and the sound of children's laughter from the playroom reminded me why I'd chosen this path. Here, I could make a difference. Here I mattered. My orientation group was small but friendly, 5 new nurses all eager to start our careers. Beth Morrison, the unit supervisor who had conducted my final interview, greeted us with warm smiles and coffee. "Welcome to Pediatric Unit 3, she said. "You're about to embark on the most rewarding journey of your lives." For 3 beautiful days, I lost myself in learning protocols, shadowing experienced nurses, and meeting my tiny patients. A 4-year-old named Marcus decided I was his favorite nurse because I knew all the Pokemon names. Baby Sarah would only stop crying when I held her during 4 changes. Their parents thanked me with tears in their eyes, and I remembered this was exactly where I belonged. Then Thursday happened. I was checking vital signs on a sleeping toddler when Stacy, the charge nurse, found me. "Harper, Beth needs to see you in her office now." Her expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the curiosity in her eyes. My stomach dropped as I handed off my patient to another nurse and made the walk to Beth's office. Dorothy sat in the visitor's chair, dressed in her best church outfit, tissues clutched in her manicured hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she'd clearly been crying. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Beth sat behind her desk, arms crossed, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Harper," Beth began carefully, "your mother is here with some serious concerns about your mental state and fitness for duty." Dorothy launched into her rehearsed speech before I could respond. "I'm so sorry to bother you, Ms. Morrison, but I'm terrified for the children. Harper has been showing signs of severe paranoia and aggression. She's created elaborate fantasies about our family, making wild accusations. Just last week, she accused us of stealing from her, of conspiring against her. She sent hundreds of threatening messages to family members." She produced a folder, laying out printed screenshots on Beth's desk. I recognized them immediately as the messages I'd sent defending myself, but she'd edited them, removing context, rearranging words. Where I'd written, "I can't believe you would do this," she'd made it appear I'd written, "I can't believe you would do this to me. You'll pay for everything." "She's always been troubled," Dorothy continued, dabbing at her eyes. "We've tried to get her help, but she refuses. When she graduated, we threw her a beautiful party, and she flew into a rage because we couldn't attend the ceremony. She said we'd ruined her life, that she'd make us sorry. I'm afraid of what she might do if she snaps at work." Beth listened patiently, occasionally glancing at me. I stood frozen, watching my mother systematically try to destroy my career 4 days after it had begun. When Dorothy finally finished, Beth leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Heath, these are serious allegations. Do you have any proof of Harper's supposed mental instability? Medical records? Police reports? Anything official? Dorothy faltered slightly. Well, no, but family knows best, don't we? A mother knows when something's wrong with her child. I see. Beth turned to me. Harper, would you like to respond? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, showing her the original messages, the timestamps of the graduation party during my ceremony, the $5,000 bill they'd sent me. I explained the whole story, watching Dorothy's face cycle through various expressions of wounded motherhood. She's lying, Dorothy gasped. This is exactly what I mean. She creates these elaborate stories. Please, you have to believe me. The children aren't safe. Beth stood up. Mrs. Heath, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you have genuine concerns about Harper's fitness for duty, please submit them in writing through proper channels. Security will escort you out. Dorothy's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. You're making a mistake. I'll go to the media. I'll tell everyone that Riverside Children's Hospital employs unstable nurses who threaten their own families. Is that what you want? Is that a threat, Mrs. Heath? Beth asked calmly, reaching for her phone. Because I'm sure hospital legal would be very interested in that statement. Security arrived to escort Dorothy out, but not before she hissed at me. This isn't over, Harper. You've embarrassed me for the last time. Beth kept me in her office after Dorothy left. Harper, I've seen this before. Toxic families who can't let go, who try to sabotage their children's success. Document everything. Every call, every message, every incident. HR needs to know about this and will put security alerts in place. I thought that would be the end of it, but Dorothy was just getting started. The next day, Frank showed up during shift change, maximum visibility. He stood in the main lobby shouting about patient safety, demanding to speak to administrators about his mentally unstable daughter, who was putting children at risk. Security removed him, but not before several families heard his rants. I spent the next hour being pulled aside by concerned parents, reassuring them that I was perfectly stable and their children were safe. One father requested a different nurse for his daughter, and I couldn't blame him. Then came the formal complaint to the nursing board. My parents filed a 16-page document alleging everything from drug abuse to patient endangerment. They claimed I'd stolen medications during nursing school, that I'd been expelled multiple times, that I'd threatened professors. All lies, all easily disproven, but the investigation process would take months. My landlord called next. Harper, I've been getting concerning calls about you. Your father says you're involved in criminal activity, that you're hiding stolen money in the apartment. Your mother came by yesterday demanding I let her in to check on you. I know it's probably family drama, but I can't have this disruption. The harassment escalated daily. Tyler started showing up at the hospital parking garage, following me to my car, screaming about family betrayal. He'd wait until I was alone, no cameras around, making threats. You think you're so smart with your degree? Wait until you can't get a job anywhere in this state. We know people, Harper. Important people. One evening, I came out to find my tires slashed. Tyler's truck was parked 3 spaces away, and he waved mockingly as I called AAA. When I filed a police report, he told officers I'd been harassing him, that I'd threatened him first. He showed them texts I'd never sent, using some app to fake my number. Without cameras in that section of the garage, it was his word against mine. Megan took the cyber approach. She created multiple fake social media profiles, joining nursing groups and hospital community pages. She posted warnings about me, sharing edited photos and fabricated stories. Beware of Harper Heath at Riverside Children's. She attacked her own family and threatened violence. Not safe around children. The posts were reported and removed, but screenshots circulated. I started noticing whispers when I walked past the nurse's station. New Orients were warned to be careful around Harper, she has family issues. My preceptor, initially warm and supportive, became distant and formal. Frank escalated to contacting board members directly. He researched every hospital board member, finding their email addresses and phone numbers. His messages painted a picture of a dangerous, unstable woman who had manipulated her way into a position of trust. He demanded my immediate termination for the safety of innocent children. One board member's wife was Dorothy's high school friend. She arranged a lunch where Dorothy performed her grieving mother routine, complete with photo albums showing happier times before I'd turned against them. The board member requested a full investigation into my hiring. My coworker James, who'd initially been friendly and supportive, pulled me aside one day. "Harper, I'm sorry, but I can't be associated with whatever this is. My wife is pregnant, and I'm up for a promotion. I can't risk getting caught in your family drama." Others followed suit, distancing themselves from the controversial new nurse. The breaking point came when Dorothy filed a report with Child Protective Services, claiming I'd made threats against children in the hospital. 2 investigators showed up during my shift, pulling me away from a procedure to question me. The humiliation burned as I sat in a conference room, defending myself against accusations that I would harm the very children I'd dedicated my life to helping. Mrs. Chen's son David, a lawyer who lived in my apartment complex, heard about the CPS visit through his mother. He offered to review my situation pro bono, warning me that my parents' harassment had crossed into illegal territory. "This is defamation, harassment, and potentially criminal conspiracy," he explained. "But proving it will be difficult without concrete evidence." I started recording everything, installing security cameras in my apartment, documenting every interaction. But the damage to my reputation was spreading like poison. Nurses who didn't know me avoided shifts with me. Parents requested other nurses for their children. The unit I'd dreamed of working in had become a battlefield. 3 weeks into my dream job, Beth called me into her office again. "Harper, I believe you. I believe your parents are doing this out of spite. But the hospital is receiving daily complaints, board members are asking questions, and families are getting nervous. I'm not firing you, but I need to move you to night shift while we sort this out. Less visibility, fewer families to reassure." Night shift meant professional isolation. The career I'd worked so hard for was being systematically dismantled by the very people who should have been celebrating my success. As I walked to my car that night, Tyler's truck in the distance and another threatening voicemail from Frank on my phone, I realized they wouldn't stop until they'd destroyed everything I'd built. But I also realized something else. They'd shown me exactly who they were, and now I had nothing left to lose by fighting back. Working night shift gave me time to think and plan. The quiet hours between 2 and 5 in the morning, when my tiny patients slept peacefully and the unit hummed with gentle efficiency, became my strategy sessions. I'd found an unexpected ally in James Rodriguez, a fellow night shift nurse who'd transferred from day shift by choice to spend more time with his family. Unlike my former day shift colleagues, he didn't care about hospital politics or gossip. "Family can be the worst kind of enemy," he said one night over cafeteria coffee. "They know exactly where to strike." He shared his own story of escaping a toxic family situation. And suddenly I didn't feel so alone. My neighbor Mrs. Chen became another source of support. The 70-year-old widow had lived through her own share of family betrayals and recognized the signs in me. She started inviting me for tea after my shifts, letting me decompress in her cozy apartment filled with photos of the children who actually appreciated her. "My daughter tried something similar when her father died," she told me one morning. "Thought she could bully me into signing over the house. But you know what? Paper trails don't lie, and neither do bank records." She winked and poured more tea. "My son David is very good at finding paper trails." Then Rachel reached out. My cousin Rachel, Aunt Claire's daughter, had always been different from the rest of the family. While Tyler played football and Megan competed in pageants, Rachel had been the quiet one who sat with me at family gatherings. Her message came through Facebook late one night. "Harper, I know we haven't talked in years, but I've been seeing what's happening. I don't believe what they're saying about you. Can we meet?" I was suspicious at first. After everything that had happened, trusting any family member felt dangerous. But Rachel persisted, sending photos from our childhood, reminding me of the time she'd stood up to Tyler when he'd destroyed my science fair project. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near the hospital. She looked older than her 28 years, stress lines around her eyes that matched my own. Harper, I'm so sorry about what they're doing to you. I've watched them operate for years. Did you know they pulled something similar with cousin Michael when he got into law school? This was news to me. Michael had supposedly moved to California for a job opportunity and cut contact with the family. They told everyone he thought he was too good for us, Rachel continued. But the truth was he refused to give Tyler a job at his firm after Tyler got fired for the third time. They made his life hell until he moved across the country. Rachel had been keeping records. She showed me screenshots of family group chats where Dorothy and Frank plotted their moves, messages where they laughed about manipulating relatives for money. I started documenting everything after what they did to Michael. I knew they'd turn on someone else eventually. Over the next few weeks, Rachel became my inside source. She attended family dinners and reported back on their plans. Dorothy was working on a new angle, claiming I'd been stealing from patients at the hospital. Frank had contacted a cousin who worked at a competing hospital, trying to spread rumors there too in case I tried to transfer. Rachel showed me bank records she'd photographed during a visit. My parents had deposited over $15,000 in the 2 weeks around my graduation, far more than the $12,000 I'd calculated. They'd been running this con for years, using every family event as an opportunity to fundraise. Tyler's graduations, Megan's pageants, even their own anniversary parties had been cash grabs disguised as celebrations. I shared everything with David Chun, who was building a legal case. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed more to prove the identity theft I suspected. Rachel promised to look for anything suspicious during her next visit. 3 weeks into our alliance, Rachel texted urgently. Found something big. Can't talk over phone. Meet tonight. We met at our usual coffee shop. Rachel looked shaken, sliding a folder across the table. Harper, I found these in your mom's desk. I think you need to see them. Inside were credit card statements in my name, addresses I'd never lived at, debts I'd never incurred. The earliest dated back to when I turned 18. There's more, Rachel whispered. I overheard them talking. They've been using your social security number for years. Utilities, credit cards, even a car loan Tyler defaulted on. They figured you'd never check your credit while you were in school. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else they'd done. While I'd been working 3 jobs to pay for textbooks, they'd been destroying my financial future. Every sacrifice I'd made had been pointless. They'd been stealing from me the entire time. Rachel helped me photograph everything before returning the documents. We built our case carefully, knowing we'd only get one shot at exposing them. She even wore a wire to family dinners, though the recordings were just for my records since Ohio was a 2-party consent state. Then everything changed. I should have known it was too easy. Rachel's support had felt too convenient, her access to information too complete. The truth came out when I arrived for our usual meeting to find not just Rachel, but Dorothy, Frank, and Tyler waiting for me. Surprise, Rachel said, but her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I'd grown to trust. Did you really think I'd choose you over family? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Every conversation, every piece of evidence I'd shared, every moment of vulnerability had been reported back to them. Dorothy smiled triumphantly as she played recordings on her phone. My voice, edited and spliced, saying things I'd never said. Thank you for providing such wonderful evidence of your instability, Dorothy purred. Talking about wiretaps, stealing documents, conspiring against your family. The nursing board will be very interested in these recordings. Tyler leaned forward, his bulk intimidating in the small space. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to publicly apologize for everything. You're going to pay back everyone who contributed to your party, plus the $5,000 for catering. And then you're going to move away and never contact any family member again. And if you don't, Frank added, these recordings go to your hospital, the nursing board, and every healthcare facility in a 100-mile radius. Rachel's been documenting your mental breakdown for weeks. Haven't you, sweetheart? Rachel couldn't meet my eyes. They promised to forgive my student loans if I helped. $42,000, Harper. I'm drowning. And they said you were planning to hurt them, that you'd gone crazy with jealousy. I was protecting them. The truth was messier. I learned later that Dorothy had been paying Rachel's minimums for months, creating a debt that could be called in when needed. They'd planned this from the moment I'd confronted them about the graduation party. Knowing I'd need an ally, knowing Rachel was perfectly positioned to play that role. Oh, and those credit card statements Rachel showed you? Dorothy laughed. Fake. We had them made to see how far you'd go with your lies. Now we have evidence of you making false accusations about identity theft. Your credibility is completely shot. They'd played the long game, and I'd walked right into it. Every move I'd made had been anticipated, countered, and used against me. The cousin I'd trusted had been their weapon from the start, and I'd handed her everything she needed to destroy me. As they left me sitting in that coffee shop, Rachel paused at the door. I'm sorry, Harper. But they're right about one thing. You should have just been grateful. All this could have been avoided if you'd just said thank you for the party. The next morning, edited recordings hit social media. Rachel's documentation of my mental breakdown went viral in our extended family network. The nursing board received a formal complaint with hours of manufactured evidence. My supervisor Beth was sent clips that made me sound dangerously unstable. David Chun reviewed everything and shook his head. They've been 3 steps ahead this entire time. Without the real recordings in context, this looks bad. Really bad. Mrs. Chun held me as I sobbed in her kitchen, the weight of the double betrayal crushing. First my parents, then the cousin I'd thought was saving me. Trust had become a luxury I could no longer afford. James found me in the break room at 3 in the morning, staring at my phone as more family members shared Rachel's evidence of my instability. You know what? He said, sitting beside me. Sometimes rock bottom is just a foundation to build something better on. What do you have to lose now? He was right. They'd taken everything. My family, my reputation, my peace of mind, my financial security. But they'd also freed me from any obligation to protect them. The gloves were off, and I was done playing defense. Mrs. Chun, I said the next evening over tea. Remember what you said about paper trails? I think it's time to start following some. All the way to the end. She smiled, the expression sharp and knowing. Now you're learning, dear. David, come here. Harper's ready to fight back properly. The war for my future had begun, and this time, I knew exactly who my enemies were. All of them. David Chun laid out the plan in his mother's living room. Legal documents spread across the coffee table like battle maps. They think they've won because they controlled the narrative. But facts don't lie, and neither do financial records. We just need to be systematic. His calm professionalism steadied my nerves as we began the counteroffensive. First, I filed formal identity theft charges with the police. The detective, a middle-aged woman named Sandra Martinez who'd seen too many family fraud cases, took my statement with grim efficiency. Run your credit report right now, she advised. Every bureau. Document everything before they have a chance to clean it up. The full scope of their theft took my breath away. 7 credit cards, 3 utility accounts, a defaulted car loan, and multiple payday loans, all opened using my social security number. The debt totaled over $60,000. My credit score was 384. While I'd been eating ramen to afford textbooks, they'd been living off credit in my name. David helped me file reports with every credit bureau, freezing my credit and disputing every fraudulent account. Each company required documentation, police reports, affidavits. I spent every waking hour not at work fighting to reclaim my financial identity. The paper trail led back years, showing patterns of fraud that coincided suspiciously with Tyler's gambling debts and Megan's shopping sprees. Then I went after the graduation party money. I contacted every relative who'd contributed, armed with evidence. The catering invoice showed the party was clearly planned for Super Bowl Sunday, not my graduation day. I had screenshots of the Facebook event page created months in advance, proving this was premeditated fraud. Aunt Claire was the first to break ranks. Harper, I found my canceled check. It's made out to Dorothy, not the restaurant. And I have texts where she specifically said the money was for your graduation celebration. Others followed as I presented evidence. Uncle Robert had Venmo receipts. Cousin Beth had email exchanges where Dorothy detailed the expenses for my party. The family fracture started small but spread quickly. Those who'd been scammed were furious, not just about the money but about being used. Dorothy tried damage control, claiming I'd forced them to throw the party then refused to attend, but the evidence was too damaging. 15 relatives signed affidavits confirming they'd been solicited for funds under false pretenses. Then came an unexpected break. A colleague at the hospital mentioned that Frank had been acting strange at work lately, nervous whenever leadership walked by. I shared this with David, who suggested we look into Frank's employment. Financial criminals rarely stop at one crime, he explained. I reached out to a forensic accountant David recommended. Within 2 weeks, she'd uncovered discrepancies in Frank's expense reports going back 5 years. He'd been submitting false receipts, inflating travel costs, and charging personal expenses to company cards. The total exceeded $40,000. His company had recently implemented new auditing procedures, which explained his nervousness. I anonymously sent the evidence to his company's fraud hotline. The investigation moved quickly. Frank was suspended within a week, and criminal charges followed soon after. The local news picked up the story. Local marketing manager arrested for embezzlement. Dorothy's carefully maintained social image cracked as neighbors whispered and friends distanced themselves. Tyler's downfall came through his own arrogance. After slashing my tires, he'd bragged about it at a bar, not realizing one of the patrons was married to a nurse at my hospital. She came forward with video evidence from her phone. The police amended their report, and Tyler was arrested for vandalism and harassment. His mugshot made the rounds on social media, especially after someone connected him to the embezzlement story. Megan's college got an anonymous tip about academic fraud. I wasn't the source, but I wasn't surprised when it emerged that half her application had been fabricated. Her scholarship was revoked, and she was expelled for submitting forged transcripts. Dorothy's Facebook post about Megan's sabbatical from studies fooled no one. The nursing board investigation into my fitness took an interesting turn when I submitted my own evidence package. Rachel's recordings, when presented in full context with date stamps and David's legal analysis, showed clear evidence of entrapment and harassment. The edited versions my family had submitted actually worked against them, demonstrating malicious intent to interfere with my career. Then the house of cards really collapsed. The IRS, alerted by the identity theft case, audited my parents' returns. They discovered Dorothy had been claiming me as a dependent for tax benefits while I filed independently, double-dipping on education credits and exemptions. The penalties and back taxes wiped out their savings. My story went viral after a local journalist picked it up. Nursing graduate fights back against family fraud became a rallying cry for others who'd experienced similar abuse. My inbox filled with messages of support and similar stories. A GoFundMe organized by my night shift colleagues raised enough to cover my legal fees and help restore my credit. The hospital, seeing the truth emerge, moved me back to day shift. Beth apologized for ever doubting me, and my colleagues rallied around me. Parents of my patients, who'd heard the full story, sent cards and flowers. One mother, a lawyer herself, offered pro bono help with civil suits. Dorothy made one last desperate attempt at control. She showed up at my apartment with a box of my childhood things, claiming she wanted to reconcile. "We can work this out as a family," she pleaded through the door. "Just drop the charges and come home. We'll forget this ever happened." I called the police and had her arrested for violating the restraining order I'd obtained. Watching them lead her away in handcuffs, I felt nothing but relief. The mother who'd never seen me was finally gone from my life. The trials were swift. Frank pled guilty to embezzlement and got 2 years in prison. Tyler received 6 months for harassment and vandalism. Dorothy was convicted of fraud and identity theft, receiving 18 months. Megan, now working retail and living in a studio apartment, posted bitter rants about family loyalty that no one read. Rachel tried to apologize once, showing up at the hospital with tears and excuses. I had security escort her out. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. The relatives who'd believed in me formed a new kind of family network. Aunt Claire became the mother figure I'd always needed. Cousins who'd been similarly scapegoated reached out, sharing their stories and support. We created a chat group called Family Fraud Survivors that grew to 30 members, all of us connected by the shared experience of being targeted by toxic relatives. My credit slowly improved as fraudulent accounts were removed and debts discharged. The civil suits resulted in judgments against my parents and Tyler, though collecting would take years. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was freedom. 6 months after that horrible graduation day, I stood before a judge as my name change was approved. Harper Marie Chin, taking the name of the woman who'd shown me more motherly love in 6 months than Dorothy had in 26 years. Mrs. Chun cried happy tears as we celebrated with tea and cookies in her kitchen. "You see," she said, patting my hand, "sometimes we must lose the family we're born to in order to find the family we're meant to have." My new badge at work read Harper M. Chin RN. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that I'd fought for the right to define myself, to build my own life free from those who'd tried to destroy it. They'd taken my graduation day, but I'd taken back my future. 1 year later, I stood at a different podium in a different auditorium, this time as the speaker rather than the graduate. The room was packed with nursing students, healthcare workers, and survivors of family fraud who'd traveled from 3 states away to attend the first annual Reclaiming Your Story conference. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was standing exactly where I'd desperately searched for my parents' faces just 12 months ago. "My name is Harper Chin," I began, my voice steady and clear. "And I want to tell you about the gift my toxic family gave me when they tried to destroy my life." The audience leaned in, a sea of faces that understood betrayal, abandonment, and the unique pain of being targeted by those who should protect you. Behind me, a projection showed 2 photos side by side. Me at graduation, alone but smiling, and me now, surrounded by my chosen family at last month's celebration dinner. The journey to this moment hadn't been linear. Therapy twice a week with Dr. Sarah Kim taught me to recognize the patterns of neglect that had shaped my entire identity. "You've been performing for an audience that was never watching," she explained during one breakthrough session. "The exhaustion you feel isn't from failure, it's from dancing for people who had their backs turned." Working through 26 years of programmed worthlessness took patience I didn't know I possessed. There were Tuesday afternoons when I sobbed in my car after therapy, grieving the parents I'd never had. There were Thursday nights when I woke in cold sweats, dreaming Dorothy was at my door again, demanding I drop the charges and come home. The hypervigilance took months to fade, that constant checking over my shoulder for Tyler's truck or Frank's familiar figure. But slowly, incrementally, I healed. My support group for family scapegoats grew from 5 members meeting in the hospital cafeteria to 50 members requiring a community center room. We called ourselves the Invisible Children, and our stories were heartbreakingly similar. The golden child who could do no wrong, the forgotten middle child, the scapegoat blamed for everything. We created resource guides for escaping financial abuse, templates for restraining orders, lists of lawyers who understood family fraud. My career flourished without the constant sabotage. I was promoted to charge nurse of the pediatric unit, then became the youngest nurse educator in the hospital's history. When I presented at national conferences about recognizing signs of family-targeted abuse in patients, rooms packed with healthcare workers taking notes. My paper on the medical impact of familial financial abuse was published in 3 journals. The Chun family legally adopted me on my 27th birthday. It was largely symbolic since I was an adult, but Mrs. Chun insisted on making it official. "You've been my daughter in all the ways that matter," she said as we signed papers. "This just makes it legal." David threw a party that included my colleagues, support group members, and the family I'd built from scratch. No one asked for money. Everyone actually showed up. Dorothy, Frank, and Tyler were released from prison within months of each other. They attempted contact through various channels, each time painting themselves as victims of a vindictive daughter. The narrative had evolved. Now they claimed I'd masterminded everything, that I'd set them up to steal their money and destroy their reputations. The relatives who still spoke to them dwindled as the lies became increasingly absurd. Last I heard, they were living in a small apartment 2 states away, working minimum wage jobs and blaming everyone but themselves. Megan had married someone she met online after 3 weeks, desperate for financial security. Sometimes I wondered if they ever sat together and acknowledged what they'd done, if they ever felt genuine remorse. Then I remembered Dr. Kim's words. Seeking accountability from those incapable of giving it is a form of self-harm. Let them live with their choices while you live with yours. The scholarship fund I established for nursing students from dysfunctional families had awarded 12 full rides in its first year. Each recipient shared their story of overcoming family sabotage to pursue their dreams. At the award ceremony, I watched these young faces light up with the recognition that someone saw them, valued them, believed they deserved success. It was the acknowledgement I'd craved my entire childhood, now given freely to those who needed it. Standing at that podium, looking out at the audience of survivors and thrivers, I delivered the truth I'd learned through pain and transformation. The gift my family gave me when they abandoned me at graduation was the revelation of their true nature. No more hoping they'd change. No more performing for their approval. No more sacrificing my well-being for people who saw me as a resource to exploit. They freed me from 26 years of false hope. The room was silent, processing. I continued. Some of you are still hoping your families will see you, will change, will finally give you the love you deserve. Let me tell you something that took me years of therapy to understand. That hope is a chain. The most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop waiting for people to give you what they don't have to give. My parents taught me, through their neglect and abuse, that I was strong enough to build my own life. Their absence at every important moment trained me to celebrate myself. Their financial theft taught me to protect my resources and trust carefully. Their smear campaign showed me who my real supporters were. Every attack refined me, burning away the desperate need for their approval, until only my authentic self remained. I'm not grateful for the abuse. I'm not thankful for the trauma. But I am profoundly aware that their actions revealed a truth that set me free. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're scanning the crowd. It's about who believes you when the world calls you crazy. It's about who helps you fight when you're too tired to stand. I gestured to my chosen family in the front row. Mrs. Chun dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. David grinned proudly. James and his wife held hands. Aunt Claire nodded encouragingly. My support group members smiled through their own tears. The empty seats at my graduation weren't a curse. They were spaces waiting to be filled by people who actually wanted to be there. Every person who abandoned me made room for someone who chose to stay. Every family member who believed their lies cleared the path for truer connections. So if you're watching from a place of pain today, know this. The family that tries to destroy your light is revealing their own darkness. Your job isn't to convince them you deserve love. Your job is to build a life so authentic that their absence becomes irrelevant. Create a chosen family that celebrates your victories. Pursue the dreams they said were impossible. Become the person they said you'd never be. And when you stand at your own podium someday, sharing your story of survival and success, remember that the greatest gift toxic people can give you is showing you exactly who they are. Believe them the first time, and use that knowledge to build something better. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, person after person approached with their own stories, their own revelations, their own journeys from abandonment to abundance. We were a tribe of the formerly invisible, now shining too brightly to ignore. That night, my chosen family gathered for dinner at Antonio's, the same restaurant my parents had used for their fraudulent scheme. We'd reclaimed the space, transforming a site of betrayal into one of celebration. As we raised our glasses in a toast, I thought about the Harper who'd sat alone a year ago, crying over graduation cake in her studio apartment. She thought she'd lost everything. She couldn't see that she was about to gain the world. To empty seats, I toasted. That make room for better people. To closed doors that force us to find open windows. To the families who show us what we don't want, so we can build what we do. And to everyone who's ever been told they're not enough. You are, you always were, and the right people will see it. As laughter filled our corner of the restaurant, as Mrs. Chun fussed over everyone's plates, as David argued playfully with James about baseball, as Aunt Claire planned our next family gathering, I understood the profound truth that had taken me 27 years to learn. Sometimes the greatest gift is discovering who won't be there, because it finally frees you to find the people who will. And when you stop seeking love from empty wells, you discover an ocean of support you never knew existed. My parents skipped my graduation for a Super Bowl party. In doing so, they gave me permission to skip the rest of my life with them and build something infinitely better. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about my worth. They were right, just not in the way they intended. I learned I was worth so much more than their conditional, transactional version of love. I learned I deserved to be celebrated, not tolerated. I learned that family shows up, or they show themselves out. And that truth, painful as it was to discover, set me free to live a life they could never have imagined for me. One filled with genuine love, authentic connections, and the kind of success that comes from being seen and valued for exactly who you are. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to breakthrough. If my story resonated with you, if you felt invisible in your own family, if you're struggling to break free from toxic patterns, I want you to know you're not alone. Share your own story in the comments below. Let's build a community of survivors who refuse to let their past define their future. Hit that like button if you believe chosen family can be stronger than blood. Subscribe for more stories of triumph over family trauma. And please, share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're worthy of being celebrated, not just tolerated. Remember, the empty seats in your life aren't punishments. They're opportunities for better people to sit down. Until next time, this is Harper Chen reminding you that you deserve to be the guest of honor at your own life. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.